What is up, everybody? SchwayZ here, and in today's video we're comparing two of the 4 electric pickup trucks on the market today. We're talking 2024 Silverado EV versus Rivian R1T. Now, before we dive into today's video, I do want to extend a huge thank you to Jerry Seiner Chevrolet of downtown Salt Lake City for giving me the opportunity to review this vehicle for you all today. If you guys are in the market for a new or used vehicle, make sure you reach out to them and let them know that SchwayZ sent you. I'm going to put their information down in the description below. So it seems like an eternity ago that the very first electric pickup truck hit the market, that being the Rivian R1T. And here we are in 2024 with the latest entrant into the market, which is this Silverado EV pickup truck. And in today's video, we're going to answer whether the Silverado EV pickup truck is better than the Rivian R1T and if it's worth its price tag. All right, so full disclosure, this is my Rivian R1T. I actually took delivery just a couple weeks ago. I haven't even had it for a month. And some of you guys may say I'm biased because this is my vehicle, and honestly, I am a little biased because I love this vehicle. I've had a great time with it over the last few weeks, but full disclosure here, I was a day one reservation holder of the Silverado EV pickup truck. I was excited for it. I thought it would be a great competitor to the somewhat slim market at the time, which was really the F-150 Lightning and the Rivian R1T. And a few weeks before I took delivery of the R1T, I called up my local dealership to find out what place in line I was in, and it sounded like it was very likely that I could potentially take delivery of the Silverado EV pickup truck end of this year, beginning of next year. So I could have waited and taken delivery of this truck in just a couple months. But knowing the information I knew about this pickup truck, I decided to still go with the R1T, and we'll talk more on that later on in the video. First thing I want to start off with is the exterior design of both of these electric pickup trucks. Now, starting off with the Rivian, I'm sure you guys have seen dozens of these on the road. They're very distinguishable from all other vehicles. You can immediately tell that this is a Rivian. Starting off, you have this large LED light bar that extends all the way from the passenger to the driver's side. That's not actually the headlight, it's just a daytime running light. Along with these oval daytime running lights as well, your headlights are actually integrated inside of this housing. There's 4 LEDs here, separated by the Rivian badging over there. And then you kind of have this flat surface because there's no need for a grille, this being an electric vehicle. Now, some people don't like the front end styling of this vehicle, and honestly, I can kind of see both camps of it. Personally, I like it because I own this vehicle. I really like how it looks, but I can also understand why this looks a little bit maybe cartoonish or different than your traditional front end styling of a pickup truck. Down here, you do have some gloss black accents, a little bit of an air vent as well for your air conditioning system, and then you do have LED fog lights down here as well. Also, skid plates protect the bottom of the vehicle. You've got some parking sensors, and then I've personally added these yellow recovery hooks because yellow matches some of the accents of this vehicle, but typically they're just a brushed aluminum color. Now, coming across the side of the vehicle, my particular vehicle has the 20-inch rims. These are the all-terrain tires. These are 275 by 65 dimension, and as you can see, this one being the quad motor, you do have more of that yellow accent badging for the brake calipers, and then your charge port door is located over here near the front, which can make it a little bit difficult at Tesla charging stations. We'll talk more about charging here in just a minute, but coming across the side profile of this pickup truck, it really doesn't look that much different than most pickup trucks out there. I mean, it's not like the Cybertruck where you have a totally different type of shape to it. You do have a little bit of an oddness here, and we'll talk more on that in just a minute for those of you that don't know. But other than that, I do like the wraparound A-pillar that's blacked out, kind of makes it look a little bit sportier. And I do like the black and white contrast. And then coming across the rear end of the vehicle, very similar to the front end styling, you have this large LED light bar that extends all the way across the rear end. And then this will also light up green when you're charging the vehicle. You got some Rivian badging down here, your R1T badge in yellow because this one being the quad motor, and then more skid plates down underneath. Your reverse marker lights are located down here at the bottom as well. Now, in regards to the truck bed, the Rivian R1T comes with a 4.5-foot bed. You can't get any other option aside from the 4-door crew cab and the 4.5-foot bed. However, opening up the tailgate, this has kind of a gooseneck-like hinge, and so because of that, as you can see, it extends quite a bit past the rear bumper. And Rivian says with the tailgate down, you've got 7 feet of length in the truck bed. That's actually a pretty impressive amount of space. So if you put in like a 4x8 sheet of plywood, it's only going to stick out about a foot. Now, the rear end of the Rivian does not have bed liner. It is kind of this composite material. Personally, I would prefer bed liner because I feel like it's a little bit more durable than just kind of this plastic material, but at least it's some sort of covering. it's not just exposed bare metal. Back here, nice feature over here is an air compressor, so you can pump up bicycle tires or even your own tires if you take this vehicle off-road. And then on the right-hand side, you've got two 120-volt power outlets, so just your typical household power outlet. You also have LED lights back here, and it's, for the most part, a pretty usable rear truck bed. Now let's jump to the design of the Silverado. So the Silverado EV is much more of a traditional looking pickup truck. Honestly, you probably couldn't even tell that this is the electric version because it doesn't really look like an EV, whereas this one definitely looks more like an electric vehicle. So the higher trim levels of the Silverado EV will have a light bar that extends all the way across the front end. It almost seems to be a rite of passage for electric pickup trucks to have a large light bar, since pretty much every single other electric pickup truck in the space has that same marking. But this one being the work truck, this one specifically is the 4WT, it doesn't have that light bar up front, but you do kind of have this simulated grille, which is really just a plastic material. Honestly, it looks a little bit on the cheaper end. It would have been nice if it was like a gloss black, but you might be saying, well, this is the work truck, of course it's going to look cheaper, but we'll touch more on that in just a minute because the price tag isn't necessarily what I would call work truck territory. So this one is just the daytime running lights. Down here is actually your headlights in typical Chevy fashion, where your headlights are kind of in the lower section of the bumper. I do like this painted surface over here. At least this isn't all black plastic, but then down here finishes off with like this rubberized material, and you've got air vents down here along with a little slot for your camera. I also don't notice any type of front parking sensors like you found in the Rivian, and then there's no skid plate protection underneath either. Now coming across the side of the vehicle, what's interesting here is it happens to be the same white color that you see on the Rivian. It also has a pretty traditional truck shape, although I would argue that the Rivian is probably more of a traditional pickup truck shape because the Silverado EV comes with this kind of funky looking C-pillar. So as you can see here, it actually angles downwards. It's very reminiscent of the old Chevy Avalanche from the mid-2000s, or I like to think of it as the Cadillac Escalade pickup truck also had this kind of odd shape to it, and it's strictly made for design purposes. It's made to look a little bit different than the F-150 Lightning and the Rivian R1T. Obviously, it's no Cybertruck shape, but it is a little bit different. This one does not have any type of wraparound A-pillar, but this black plastic does kind of shape into this C-pillar down here that extends into your pickup truck bed. Now coming to the rear end, I would say it looks honestly no different than the internal combustion version of the Silverado. You have very similar taillight housings, still a rear plastic bumper. I do like that you have this little side step here, and then looks like you have parking sensors located across the rear end, along with your 2-inch trailer hitch receiver. Now the Rivian R1T also has a trailer hitch receiver, but it's actually covered by a piece of plastic, so you have to remove that in order to access it. But other than that, let's talk about the bed here. So it does have a soft opening similar to the Rivian R1T, but this has a traditional bed liner material. I like that because I think it's going to be a little bit more durable than what the plastic material is inside of the R1T. And then in terms of the truck bed here, it is massive. I mean, this is what you would expect from a full-size pickup truck. It's much larger than that in the Rivian. We're talking a 5'11" bed in terms of its length. And then obviously opening this up, you add about an extra 1.5 feet. So in terms of total length, it's probably pretty similar to the Rivian, but the width is wider, and then with the tailgate closed, it's obviously a bigger truck as well. Now in terms of lighting back here, you do have some on the left and the right hand side, along with the lighting located above the rear window. What's interesting here is there's lots of power accessories here. So not only do you have 4 household power outlets back here, which are kind of hard to reach because this tailgate is so long, but you also have a 240 volt adapter. So you can actually plug in like a dryer and power a dryer at a campsite using the power that you have on board. Now there are a couple optional features that you can get that separate the Silverado EV from the Rivian R1T. For one, it's GMC's multi-pro tailgate. Of course, this work truck does not come with it, but it's like a 6 or 7 position different type of tailgate. You've seen me show it off in other videos. It's very handy and useful to have, but there's also a new novel feature that has come back for the Silverado EV, and that is the multi-flex midgate. So on higher trims of the Silverado EV, that back portion of the truck bed will be able to fold down to give you extra space inside of the truck bed. So Chevy says with that midgate folded down, you'll be able to get upwards of 9 feet of length with the tailgate closed. Now, with the tailgate open, you'll get 10 feet, 10 inches of length inside of the truck bed of the Silverado EV. That's really impressive. Now, I will say this isn't a new feature that they've just introduced in the Silverado EV. It actually came on the Chevy Avalanche back in the day, and in fact, the Hummer pickup truck back in the day also had a midgate that would fold down. Obviously, your length wasn't as long, but you did have that feature. So it'd be nice if Chevy reintroduced that on some of their internal combustion pickup trucks and not just the EV. However, it is an option if you choose to get the EV version. That is a really neat feature that separates this from some of the other electric pickup truck competition. The other advantage of that midgate is it's not going to be one large panel. What that means is you could fold each side independent of one another. So if you just happen to have a large canoe, you can fold it in on one side and then still have somebody sitting in the passenger side. That way you don't sacrifice all of your cargo capacity in the second row, but you can still use the longer truck bed. Next up, let's address sizing. You may have noticed when I showed off the truck bed, these trucks are not the exact same size, even though they technically compete against each other. The Rivian is kind of in a class of its own. It's a little bit bigger than a mid-size pickup truck like the Tacoma or the Ranger, but it's a little bit smaller than a full-size pickup truck like the Silverado or the F-150 Lightning. So the length of the Rivian is 217.1 inches long. The width with the mirrors folded in is 81.8 inches wide, and the height is 78.3 inches tall in its highest suspension mode. More on that in just a minute. Jumping over to the Silverado, not only does it visually appear larger than the Rivian, but it is larger. It's 233.1 inches long, which is about 15 inches longer than the Rivian R1T. However, its width is comparable at 83.8 inches wide, and its height is also comparable at 78.7 inches tall. Now, in regards to the exterior styling and the amenities, it's kind of a toss-up on which one is better. The R1T definitely has some advantages, but for traditional pickup truck buyers, the Silverado EV is probably a better choice because it does have that larger truck bed. Now, when you jump on the inside, that's where it kind of starts to fall apart for the Silverado EV. Let's jump inside the Rivian. Let me show you what I'm talking about. All right, jumping inside the Rivian, one of the things that very much impressed me ever since I reviewed one years ago was just the interior quality and the fit and finish. So first off, this is all soft touch material on the Rivian. Now, I will say this is not genuine leather. This is vegan leather or faux leather, whatever you want to call it, vinyl, but it's not genuine leather, but it does feel like it. It doesn't feel like the faux leather that I've experienced in some budget vehicles like the Chevy Trax. You do have genuine wood over here though. Mine is the ash wood, so it's a little bit of a darker color. This is the Ocean Coast interior, which I particularly like, but it's kind of like this grayish leather color. You do have aluminum touches over here on your window switches, your door handle as well, and then down here you've got more kind of this accent stitching that extends all the way across the door panel. Even this section over here is wrapped in this kind of faux leather material, so it's not just a hard touch plastic. You've got this cloth material that covers the storage for the door pocket. It's not as large as the Silverado EV, but it's still decent. This one also has the 17 speaker Rivian Elevation audio system, and I gotta say, it's not the best speaker setup. I feel like it is missing a little bit of bass, so audiophiles may complain. For me, it's perfectly fine because I came from a 6-speaker Ford Bronco, but it's not the best for people who are expecting a knockout sound system. But talking about these seats, I love the way they look. I love the badging over here. This is all lined in aluminum. You've kind of got this cool design and shape to it. You've also got this cloth material that extends all the way around the headrest and down the center of the seat. These are, of course, power seats. They've got lumbar support. These are heated and ventilated. And then jumping inside, let's talk interior styling, because this is where I think it kind of looks like a more luxurious vehicle. First off, this is all soft touch material across the dashboard. It's the same leather wrapped surfaces that you found on the door panel. You've got more of that dark ash wood with Rivian engraved inside of the wood itself. This is more of that cloth material, kind of looks like a speaker grill. And then in front of you, let's talk about the tech here. You've got a 12.3 inch all digital gauge cluster display, and there's not too much functionality here, to be completely honest with you. On the left hand side, you've mostly got your navigation or your efficiency. In the center, when you have your adaptive cruise control on, it will show you the cars around you. And then on the right hand side, it's got your speedometer. But there are other gauge clusters out there, all digital ones, that have more functionality. You can't really do like a full screen GPS or anything like that. But that's not to say it's not something that they can't add over time with software updates. Talking about the steering wheel, it is also that vegan leather wrapped. You've got more of that ash wood all around these buttons over here. These buttons can be used to control your cruise control, your volume. They kind of change depending on what menu you're in. And then this steering wheel is heated functionality. You've also got automatic high beams, automatic headlight controls over here, and your washer controls as well. And then this is your gear selector. You can tap down on it to activate your highway assist, which we'll talk more on that in just a minute. Jumping over to the center screen, this is a 15.6-inch touchscreen, and I think it fits this vehicle perfect. It's very large. It's almost too large for this vehicle, but there are, of course, other manufacturers that offer something larger, specifically the Silverado EV, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But the software here is really, really nice. So not only do you have 4 drive modes in your on-road settings, you've got more than that in your off-road settings for a total of 9. You can also adjust your air suspension in various ways. Everything is pretty snappy and quick to respond. I mean, I think Tesla might be just a little bit quicker, but it's almost as quick, and it's definitely one of the best in the industry. You've got quick access for your music apps down here. You've also got a 360-degree camera. Now, the camera resolution isn't perfect, especially when you turn your turn signal on. So when I put this into, the left blinker, it turns it on, and it's not the best quality, but it's not terrible. And the Gen 2 Rivians are going to have much better camera quality as well. But I do like that you at least have a 360-degree camera here. You've also got something called Gear Guard, which is essentially a set of cameras around the vehicle that will track if anything's happened to the vehicle, like if somebody scratches it or dents it or anything like that. It's very similar to Tesla's Sentry mode. And you've also got a camping mode here, where this vehicle will either conserve energy or it can turn on the lights around the vehicle. It can also level the truck, so it uses the air suspension to make sure everything is level. And there's so much stuff just baked into here. Lots of energy information, how much it takes to charge, how quickly you can charge. All of that information is baked in here. Then your climate control settings are baked into the bottom section of the screen, and then you actually adjust the air vents using the buttons on the screen. You don't actually use the vents themselves to adjust the airflow. You have to use the screen, which is good and bad. The only real good thing is you can save presets. So if somebody sits in your car and messes this up, you kind of have like a memory setting, so you can adjust those air vents. One downside to their Rivian UI is there's no Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, and there's honestly no plans to ever include that as part of a software update. Rivian and Tesla believe that their software is more advanced, and for that reason they're not really integrating that. I think that's kind of a little bit of a baloney, because Android Auto is really nice. I had it on my Ford Bronco and really enjoyed it, and I think that's something they should integrate, even though they've kind of started to roll in some apps here and there, but it's still not the same as having Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. Up above you, not too much to report. You do have some light controls over here with your LEDs, and then this has a giant panoramic moonroof, although it is so tinted that it's almost pointless. Like, it's really nice to look out of, but even right now on a very sunny day, it's kind of hard to really see out of it. There's no sunshade either, but it does make the interior feel a little bit more airy. You've got more speaker grills over here as well. And then down here towards your center, you've got a large compartment down at the bottom where you can throw like a purse or your wallet or something like that, so it doesn't just roll around. You've got your cup holders that retract into the center arm console, and then you've got a wireless charging pad, technically 2, but it doesn't work that great. And then a pretty decently sized center arm console over here where you can throw, a bunch of little things here and there. And then that's also where you throw in your hard drive for your cameras to save the events that go around the vehicle. Other than that, you've just got a little storage compartment located right under the seat. It's like a little cubby. And then let's talk about what's going on in the second row. Jumping back here, not too much more to report. You have the same nice soft touch materials all across the door panel, almost an exact copy of the first row. And then same with the seats over here, very nice, bright and airy. You do have a center arm console over here with 2 cup holders and a little compartment over there. And then you've got a screen back here where you can control the audio settings. You can also control the climate. It's the same climate that you have in the first row, but you can obviously, turn up the fan speed or turn it down or change the positioning of where the airflow is going, and you can turn on the heated seats. And then back here you have a pretty decent amount of legroom, but definitely not full-size territory. We're talking 36.6 inches. Any full-size adult can sit here pretty much just fine, but I can't say it's gobs of legroom. It's just a normal amount, kind of like your typical compact crossover. And then in terms of headroom, obviously plenty of space because it's kind of like that boxy cab shape to it. Now let's jump inside of the Silverado. It's a little bit of a different story. All right, let's jump inside the Silverado EV. Now, you do have a traditional key for the Silverado, whereas the Rivian, it does come with a key fob, but for the most part, you're actually just going to use your smartphone. It will automatically lock and unlock depending on your distance from the vehicle, whereas this vehicle will do the same. However, you do have a traditional key fob, but you do also have the GM app where you can kind of climate control the vehicle before getting into it. So, unlocking this vehicle, let's talk about what's going on here. And In all honesty, it's a sea of black. So starting off with the door panel, this is all hard touch plastic material. So unlike the Rivian where everything was soft touch, more upscale, everything here is built to be a work truck, which is perfectly fine. I'm all for work trucks and having affordable vehicles, but well, we'll talk more on this Monroney in just a second. So hard touch plastics all the way over here. Same with the window switches. These are typical Chevy controls. Some of the same stuff you find in the work truck versions of the Silverado. Over here, you do have a speaker grill. I'm not quite sure how many speakers are located inside of the 4WT. You do have a pretty large storage compartment over here where you could put 2 water bottles and just a little snack container over here as well. Now, jumping onto the seats, these are faux leather, similar to the Rivian, but these definitely feel a little bit more on the vinyl side. They're not as kind of a premium vegan leather that you find in some Tesla Rivian products. These are also manually operated. These are not automatic. Now, on top of not having any power control or lumbar support, you also don't have any heated or ventilated functionality for the front row. Now, jumping inside this vehicle so it stops beeping at us, let's talk about what's going on here. Starting off with the dashboard, similar to how I did in the Rivian, this is kind of a harder touch plastic material. It's definitely rubberized, so it has a little bit of grip and texture to it, but this is hard touch plastic. Same with pretty much everywhere else around the cabin. This is all hard touch plastic. Same with over here. Same with where you're going to rest your knee. This is all hard touch plastic material because this is the work truck. In fact, even the steering wheel is a plastic steering wheel, something you'd find in kind of a base work truck that you get from an F-150 or a Silverado. Now, of course, this being a plastic steering wheel, you don't have heated steering functionality either. Now, on the left-hand side of the steering wheel, you do have cruise control settings over here. You can set the speed, set the distance. On the right-hand side is your music, your voice activation controls, and how you'll control your gauge cluster display. This is an 8-inch gauge cluster that's very similar to the one I saw in the Chevy Trax. There's not too much functionality here, kind of similar to the Rivian, honestly. I wish they had more functionality like some of the German vehicles out there, but it's nice. You can obviously go through your Seek track settings, you can change the media, you can look at various information. And one of the biggest things that I'm going to talk about later, but I want to hint at right now, is the fact that this vehicle has 87% charge on its battery, and it has 442 miles according to the vehicle itself. So that's pretty impressive. We'll touch more on that in just a minute. You do also have buttons located on the back of the steering wheel for your Seek and track settings. You've got your windshield wiper controls on the left-hand side. Your headlight controls are actually built into the touchscreen, which is a little bit odd. You've also got your gear selector located over here, very similar to the Rivian. Now, on the left-hand side of the steering wheel, you've got your parking brake, you've got your lane keep assist, you can open up your front, and you've got your trailer brake controller located over here. You do have a tilt and telescopic steering wheel similar to the Rivian. This is also automatic, not manual adjusting. Let's talk about what's going on here. This is an 11-inch touchscreen, so definitely smaller than that in the Rivian. However, you can get upwards of a 17.7-inch touchscreen on some of the higher trim levels of the Silverado. You can also get upwards of an 11-inch gauge cluster display. So a lot of these bezels will disappear if you choose the higher trim level. However, given the price of this vehicle, you kind of would expect a little bit more. Now, this runs Chevy and GM's typical UI. It's a very nice software. Now, I can't say it's as quick as the Rivian. Rivian's is definitely a little bit more advanced. However, it runs Google's software. So you can ask it questions like you would a smart home device and it'll answer questions. I will say the Rivian does have Amazon Alexa integrated into it, but it's not quite the same as having Google pretty much control your entire vehicle. You can ask it to change the temperature. You can ask it for recommendations for restaurants. It really is kind of built into the software of the Silverado EV. You've also got a charging screen similar to the Rivian where you can obviously set a schedule. You can see how much charge you have, how much range you have, etc. So all of that stuff is built in, and I gotta say, it's still pretty snappy. I know I like the Rivians a little bit more because it's a little bit prettier looking, but this is no worse than the Rivians. It's still very nice to use and probably a little bit easier to learn than the Rivians. Most of your quick access apps are located over here on the left-hand side, and then this is kind of your main home screen like you'd find on your typical smartphone device. This also comes with a 360-degree camera as standard, even on the work truck. And I gotta say, I think the camera quality might be a little bit better than that in the Rivian. It's kind of hard to say because of different angles, but it's a very good camera system. GM does a very good job at that. You also have a physical volume knob. Unlike in the Rivian, you kind of have to use the touchscreen or the steering wheel controls. Also, unlike the Rivian, you do get wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay for now on the Silverado EV. I have heard rumors that they're getting rid of that on some of the higher trim levels, and they don't actually offer that on the Blazer EV, so it does seem like GM is kind of stepping away from that as well. But for now, you can still get that, which is definitely an added bonus for having the Silverado. Now down here, you've got your air vents and you've got fixed buttons for your climate control settings, unlike in the Rivian where everything's in the touchscreen. Down here, you've got a pretty large storage compartment. There's no wireless charging pad here. You can only get that on the higher trim levels, but you do have 2 USB ports, cigarette style power outlet, and a little shelf here so you can put your phone and manually plug it in. Pretty large storage compartment that's all open. You got 2 cup holders and then a nice leather wrapped surface. This is of course faux leather. And then opening this section up, it reveals a much deeper cabin that actually has a pass-through into this section over here. So kind of interesting design. And then you can obviously put your smartphone over here. Up above you, you got your typical LED light controls, but there is no sunroof or panel sunroof as an option on this one. Of course, you can get that on the higher trim levels, but the work truck does not come with that. Unlike the Rivian, you do have a little storage compartment over here, and you've got a glove compartment. You actually don't have a glove compartment in the Rivian for some reason. That's why you have the under seat storage. But let's jump into the second row and show off what's going on there. Now, jumping into the second row of the Silverado EV, you can immediately tell the difference in size. This is a massive door, massive entry and exit into the vehicle. This, of course, all hard touch plastics, as to be expected. Again, it's a pretty much exact copy of the first row. Same with the storage compartments here. And then in terms of legroom, this is where this is a huge advantage over the Rivian. You've got 44 plus inches of legroom inside of the second row. I mean, this is what I call gobs of space. Definitely more space than the Rivian R1T. So if second row legroom is important for you, this vehicle has it. Also, I do like that at least you still have vents back here. Some work trucks don't have that. Still got 2 cup holders, a little compartment over here, and you've got a household power outlet back here. I should mention the Rivian also has that. It's just a little bit more hidden in the second row. You also got a large compartment over here and 2 USB ports, but there is no center arm console. You don't get that on the work truck. However, what you do get is something that comes in a lot of half-ton pickup trucks, is a large flat loading surface. So if you need to load large objects into here, you can do that in the Silverado EV, whereas in the Rivian, really your only option is to open up this small storage compartment over here. Now, it's better than nothing, but it's not quite like having a half-ton pickup truck amount of storage space. You can also open up the passenger side, but there's a subwoofer down there, so there's really not that much more added space, but definitely a huge advantage to the Silverado. Jumping back to the Silverado, you've got a small amount of storage located over here, so you can throw some stuff back here so it doesn't roll around. And then let's talk about the headroom. Definitely plenty of space above you, similar to the Rivian, but in general, the cabin feels much larger. This is no comparison to the Rivian. This feels like a limousine. It's huge on the inside, very similar to every other half-ton pickup truck like the F-150 or the Chevy Silverado 1500. All right, if you guys are enjoying the content, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you can stay on top of all of the weekly uploads. That helps me out a lot to create more cool content on the channel. All right, let's get back to the video. All right, for the next category, and a very important one for electric pickup trucks, that has to do with storage. So let's start off with the Rivian. Now, starting up front over here, you do have a power-operated frunk. So you push the button, or you can use your phone, or you can use the controls on the inside, and you'll open up this pretty large amount of space in the front of the vehicle. You can actually fold it up, and it magnetizes and attaches to the back, and you can open up a much larger storage bin. And Rivian says there's about 11.7 cubic feet of space located inside of the front trunk. You've also got a little drain plug over here, so if you pour this thing with ice, you can kind of use it like a cooler. And then to simply close it, you push this button again, and it will automatically close. But there's actually more closed storage inside of the Rivian. So when Rivian released the R1T, they had some very revolutionary ideas, and one of them was in regards to storage. That has to do with this large compartment located behind the second row called the gear tunnel. And Rivian says it's about 67 or so inches wide, and it has about 11.6 cubic feet of space. This is waterproof and closed tight, except you can reach it from the second row. So when you open up the arm console in the second row, you can gain access to this little section over here by simply lifting up this flap. So if you have some stuff back here that you want to reach, you can always open that up. But this allows for you to throw in your golf bags or your ski boots or whatever, and kind of keep it out of the main cabin so that everything else is clean on the inside, and then you can kind of keep things dirty in here. Also, these double as seats or steps. These can support up to 250 pounds, and so it makes your Rivian a little bit more like a traditional crossover when it comes to storage space, but there's actually more than just that. Now, jumping into the truck bed, there is this little handle over here on the driver's side, and opening this space up opens up a pretty large compartment estimated to be around 10 cubic feet of space. Now, it's primarily for a spare tire, but it also doubles as a storage compartment, and it's got a drain plug in there as well, so you can fill this up with ice as well and drain it at the end of the day. But this provides even more, mostly watertight closed storage inside of the Rivian, so that you don't have to worry about having stuff just rolling around back here. Also, most Rivians come with a power tonneau cover, which will close up and lock up to give you even additional closed storage space. When you combine the front trunk, the interior storage underneath the second row seat, the gear tunnel, and the space under the truck bed, Rivian says there's about 68 cubic feet of closed storage space inside of the R1T. That's got to be a record for a pickup truck. All right, let's jump inside the front trunk of the Silverado EV. So you simply push this button on the front, and it is not power operated. It just unlatches it, and then you have to lift it up yourself. Now, the higher trim levels will come with a power-operated front trunk, but the work truck does not come with that. Now, jumping into the front trunk of the Silverado EV, very similar fashion. You have your charging cable over here, so you can constantly store it here. But one feature that this vehicle has that the Rivian doesn't have is a household power outlet located in the first row. So you can plug some items into here and power stuff at a campsite. This doesn't have a double layer design, so you can't stick stuff in underneath. And so for that reason, it's only 10.7 cubic feet of space. However, because the grille opens up with the hood, you can load stuff in a little bit lower than in the Rivian, where you kind of have to load it over the front grille. So it makes it a little bit easier to load heavier items into and out of the Silverado EV. I believe this vehicle also has a drain plug located over here. And it's kind of like this more durable plastic surface over here. So it's nice. It's not a carpeted material that can easily get dirty. You've also got a little slot over here for cup holders. So this is kind of the perfect work truck vehicle. Very usable front end. However, you do have to manually close it by pulling down on this somewhat heavy front hood, but it does automatically retract and kind of lock itself into place, so you don't have to slam it like you would with a traditional front hood. Coming to the side of the vehicle, there's no fancy gear tunnel. There's also no underbed storage, but you do have a glove compartment on the inside and that large amount of storage space in the second row. So even though it's not closed or lockable storage, it is still plenty of storage space inside of the Silverado, arguably a little bit more than the Rivian R1T, just given the size of this vehicle. All right, next up, let's talk about the powertrain of these two pickup trucks. And this is another category where I think the Rivian takes the cake. So this particular Rivian is the quad motor setup, and as I mentioned earlier, one way you can tell is with the yellow brake calipers and the yellow surrounding the badging. However, there are also dual motor and dual motor performance versions. There's also a tri-motor coming out, so there's plenty of different options here. But in pretty much every single powertrain setup, the Rivian has a little bit more power than the Silverado EV. Talking strictly about the quad motor, this one has 835 horsepower, 908 pound-feet of torque. There's 4 motors. There's a 1 motor on every single axle. This thing does 0 to 60 in about 3 seconds flat. It has a maximum towing of 11,000 pounds and a payload maximum of 1,764 pounds. Now, for those of you curious on the exact payload of this particular quad motor, let's take a look here. And the payload here is 1,559 pounds. Now, jumping to the Silverado EV, every single one comes with a dual motor setup. Now, there are going to be more high performance trim levels, but for now, talking about this 4WT, you've got 515 horsepower and 600 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 60 figures for this is somewhere in the mid 5-second range, so about 2.5 seconds slower than the Rivian R1T. In terms of towing capacity, you've got a maximum of 10,000 pounds, which is a little bit less than the Rivian. However, if you choose the 3WT trim level, you can get a maximum of 12,500 pounds, and Chevy says there's going to be a 20,000 pound max towing capacity version coming out in the near future. In terms of payload, on paper, the maximum is 1,400 pounds on the 4WT, but let's take a look at the sticker on the door panel. So according to the sticker, the max payload of this vehicle is 1,425 pounds, so it matches almost exactly to what the maximum is on paper. Now, in terms of weight here, both of these are not skinny. This thing weighs about 7,100 pounds. This thing weighs about 8,800 pounds, which makes sense given the difference in size between the two. Next up, let's address charging, and that's actually one area where the Rivian is weaker than the Silverado. So this vehicle runs on the 400 volt architecture. It's essentially an older type of architecture that similar to the F-150 Lightning, similar to some of the Tesla products out there except for the Cybertruck. This vehicle doesn't charge as quick as some of the competition. We're talking about a peak charging rate of 220 kilowatts, and this vehicle has a battery of 135 kilowatt hours. So you can kind of do the math to figure out how long you need to charge one of these from 0 to 100. The max range on this particular particular quad motor with the all-terrain tires is 289 miles, although Rivian says this large battery pack on some more fuel-efficient tires can get a maximum range of 352 miles, and if you choose the max battery pack on the Rivian R1T, you can get a max range of 410 miles. However, that vehicle comes with a larger battery at 149 kilowatt hours. If you're charging at home, your maximum intake from AC to DC current is an 11.5 kilowatt onboard charger, which is okay. It's about average compared to other vehicles in this segment. Now, jumping over to the Silverado EV, it's very interesting here because this vehicle is technically a 400 volt architecture, except when you plug it in to charge. So when you do that, the two battery packs that are inside of this vehicle, kind of stacked on top of each other, they connect, essentially making this an 800 volt architecture, which packs some really strong charging numbers. So the peak charging curve for this is about 350 kilowatts. That is impressively quick. That's one of the fastest in the segment. That's really one of the advantages of this Ultium platform that Chevy has been using for a lot of their EVs. Now, that means that you can get about 100 miles of range in just about 10 minutes at a public DC fast charger, assuming it can run the fastest 350 plus kilowatts of energy. Not all of them out there are like that. Now, this battery is definitely more massive than the R1T, which contributes to the heavy weight of this vehicle. We're talking about a 205 kilowatt hour battery pack. It is a massive battery. It really takes up this entire section down here of the vehicle is the battery pack. However, because of this massive battery pack, this is the longest range pickup truck you can buy today. We're talking 450 whopping miles on the 4WT trim level, or a very impressive 393 miles on the 3WT. If you plug this vehicle in at home, the AC to DC current is about 19.2 kilowatts of energy, so almost double the speed of the Rivian R1T, which honestly you're going to need that because it's such a large battery pack. In order to charge this up quicker at home, you're going to need a faster charging rate, but of course you're going to have to upgrade your home charger to be able to support that power. Now, the other advantage to the Silverado that the Rivian currently doesn't support is power on board. So essentially, using an inverter, you can plug this vehicle into your home and power your home. That means the 205 kilowatt hour battery pack can turn on your appliances, power your air conditioning. I mean, essentially, this is an onboard generator that you can keep inside of your house and simply plug and play. Very useful for certain regions of the country. I'm talking to you, Texas. Chevy says you can offload about 10.2 kilowatts of energy off of this vehicle, which is faster than my at-home charger when I'm charging up my Rivian. So very impressive stats here because Chevy invested a lot of money into this Ultium platform. It did have some hiccups when it first came out, but their platform is definitely one of the best among the competition. Now, in terms of safety features and tech, I would say the Silverado EV maybe has the upper hand because the Rivian R1T comes with the Driver Plus package, which allows for adaptive cruise control, lane centering on the highway, blind spot cameras, and blind spot monitoring. The Silverado EV, on the other hand, has blind spot monitoring, adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist. However, the Silverado EV can be equipped with Chevy's Super Cruise system, which is essentially hands-free driving on most major highways. Rivian currently does not have that, and even when they do have that, it's not going to be available on the Gen 1 R1T, so you're going to have to upgrade to the Gen 2, whereas Silverado EV, starting in 2024, you can get one with a Super Cruise system, and it's a great self-driving technology. Next up, let's talk the suspension bits between the two, and that's where Rivian takes the cake. The R1T actually comes with a very similar suspension you'd find on some McLarens. It's a hydraulic cross-linking adaptive damper suspension. It's very complicated. I don't necessarily understand the specifics. However, what I do know is using the infotainment screen, you can adjust the vehicle height all the way as low as 8.7 inches of ground clearance, all the way up to 14.9 inches of ground clearance, making this a very incredibly capable off-road vehicle. Now, jumping over to the Silverado, you can get this equipped with an air suspension. The 4WT does not come with that. However, even with that air suspension, it only raises and lowers about 2 inches. So kind of pales in comparison to the R1T. It's not meant for off-roading. However, the Silverado EV can be equipped with rear wheel steering, which I've experienced on the Hummer EV, and it makes it a much more nimble vehicle. So that is definitely an advantage that the Rivian cannot compete with. However, because of the air suspension on the Rivian R1T, its off-road capabilities are much stronger. We're talking an approach angle of 35.7 degrees, breakover angle of 26.4 degrees, and a departure angle of 29.9 degrees. You can also go through upwards of 43 inches of water fording inside of the Rivian. That's over 3 feet of water in the off-road mode. That's really impressive. impressive considering this is a battery underneath. The Silverado EV simply can't compete because it's not meant to be an off-roader. Your approach angle is 21.7 degrees, and I'll have specifics on the breakover angle, but your departure angle is only 22.9 degrees, and I haven't found anywhere where Chevy recommends water fording inside of the Silverado. All right, now the last and probably most important topic I want to discuss is the pricing. And pricing is the reason why I've been pretty harsh on the Silverado EV. So let's start off with the Rivian. The starting price of the R1T as of 2024 was just around $69,000, $70,000. This particular vehicle, the quad motor with that white interior, pretty much fully equipped, it's just around $85,000 after destination. That's a lot of money. Let's talk about the Silverado EV. So when they first announced this vehicle back in 2022, the reason I put a reservation on it was they said the starting price would be just under $40,000. I figured you add a couple features, destination charge, etc., maybe a $50,000 pickup truck. That's pretty impressive pricing for an all-electric pickup truck that has over 400 miles of range. Well, the pricing is not $40,000, it's not $50,000, it's not even $60,000. You may want to take a seat for this, but the Silverado EV in the 3WT trim level as of 2024 started just around $75,000. This 4WT after destination is just about $80,000. That means the difference between this pickup truck and this one is about $5,000, whereas this one has much better acceleration, much more storage capacity, much more off-road capability. Really, the main advantage to this is range and the fact that it is a half-ton pickup truck. So I started thinking, who is this truck really made for? And I think there's a specific category of individual. One, you're the type of person that wants to have or needs to have an electric pickup truck for whatever reason. You maybe get certain tax credit incentives, maybe you want to be better for the environment, whatever your reasons may be, you want to have an electric pickup truck, and it has to be a full-size pickup truck. Well, that automatically eliminates the R1T and even the Cybertruck to a certain extent, because the Cybertruck's actually a little bit smaller than the F-150 Lightning. So then you're really stuck with two electric pickup trucks, the Silverado EV and the F-150 Lightning. And that being said, there is no trim level of the F-150 Lightning that has this much range and this quick of charging. The Silverado EV really stands on its own in terms of range for an electric pickup truck. Having 450 miles of range, if that is realistic in real-world testing, that is a huge competitive advantage over the F-150 Lightning. Yes, it's a very expensive vehicle, but this essentially mainstreams electric vehicles to be able to go regular distances on a single charge. You know, a big complaint for electric vehicles is the fact that you have to stop and charge them up for like an hour every, 2.5 hours of driving. Whereas this vehicle with 450 miles of range essentially eliminates that issue, because chances are after driving 450 miles, you probably should take a little bit of a break. And given the fact that this vehicle has upwards of 350 kilowatts of peak charging rate, that's going to charge this vehicle up incredibly quick to get you on the road, almost as quick as filling up your gas vehicle. I absolutely love what GM is doing with the Ultium platform. However, I think this vehicle is overpriced. I think the RST trim levels or some of the other trims with some nicer interior, power seats, wireless charging, I think those ones going for the mid-80s to $90,000 range is probably realistic for an electric pickup truck. But a work truck at this price range, I think it's a little steep, and I think Chevy is going to start discounting these heavily to be able to move the inventory, because the competition in this space is much more affordable. But what are your thoughts on the Silverado EV? Would you take this over an R1T, F-150 Lightning, maybe even a Cybertruck? Let me know down in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for all of the weekly car videos. Also check me out on all the social media at SchwayZ_. Until next time, everybody, I hope you stay SchwayZ, stay healthy, have a wonderful day.